It's our last chance at redemption.
When it comes to sequels, or in this case, unpopular sequels, you have to put it in the perspective of what it has to live up to. The Lost World in 1941 seemed to tie for Spielberg's least popular movies, and while the latter is likely a case of when it came out, The Lost World is a sequel to Jurassic Park. The first sequel. If not for that, I don't think it'd be so disliked. Based on Michael Crichton's second novel, which he basically wrote so Spielberg could make a sequel, The Lost World may be a success financially, but that's about it. This time with Jeff Goldblum in the lead role. It follows the events on a secondary island, the Breeding Island, Site B, in an attempt to build a new theme park, humans not using any common sense, a slightly darker tone, and a healthy amount of Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum.
It's so important to your future that you not finish that sentence.
Oddly enough, Spielberg almost didn't even direct, but the question is, why is this sequel so heavily disliked, and why do so many others defend it? I think I have the answer. Whenever anybody complains about this movie, it usually comes down to two things: the tone being completely different, as in not feeling like the original, and a whole lot of scenes that make no fucking sense. As for the latter, the first movie kind of had that too, not to the extent we'll see here, but still. Example being the gun Tim could have handed her, but when you consider the absence of logic, and add on the completely different tone the film gives off, it does start to make sense. Like I said, Jurassic Park is slightly overrated. It had issues, pacing issues, its own logic issues, but due to how amazing everything else was, the revolutionary effects, a sense of awe and amazement, these issues weren't really considered. While that movie was about a dinosaur theme park that still had good intentions with one person messing it up, this one focuses more on human greed. The wonder has kind of worn off, and while I do like Jeff Goldblum, having him as the lead, the guy who hated the park to begin with, that sucks out any of the magic the film had left. So when you add on the multitude of scenes that don't make sense to what is the least feel-good JP movie, I do see why some people don't like it. Not to mention it has to live up to Jurassic fucking Park, but as you can tell by now, I don't follow this mindset. It's an unsuperior movie, like almost every sequel is, and don't worry, I will get into every single reason why. But unlike JP3 that is blatantly nothing, and later sequels that will do anything to keep the franchise going, this is the one and only time they attempted to do something different that wasn't ridiculous. As you know, I don't hate Jurassic World, but that's for different reasons, so let's dive in a bit deeper and see if I can make any kind of argument. The opening scene I kind of like, despite it being a bit ridiculous. A family on a yacht cruise accidentally stumble across the island, and they let their daughter wander off alone because what could go wrong? Might want to investigate. There's enough of you. Doesn't sound good. Okay, so on one hand, that is clever. We're supposed to believe Goldblum is actually there, but then again, why would she be screaming about that? Funny thing is, this movie actually has deleted scenes that you can see, even on TV sometimes, and the first one that's kind of interesting, likely cut due to pacing, would have broken up this sequence, making Jeff Goldblum's jungle backdrop pointless, but we do get the film debut of Eli Roth. Look at him, full of dreams. So basically, Peter Ludlow, played by Arliss Howard, who is John Hammond's nephew, and a slightly less obvious villain, used the aforementioned incident on the island to take control of his company, InGen, the same company that makes dinosaurs, but the first movie never mentioned it. It did show it, so it's not completely made up, and we learn that Site B, Isla Sorna, is where the dinosaurs were bred and cloned, so Ludlow wants to exploit them to save InGen from bankruptcy. Hammond, however, has a completely foolproof plan to stop this, by sending Jeff fucking Goldblum, Vince Vaughn for some reason, and Odin from God of War, to document the thriving dinosaurs and encourage a non-interference policy. The conversation is actually pretty amusing, even the idea that he'd agree to this.
I'm not making the same mistakes again.
No, you're making all new ones.
But there is a fourth person he skipped over, the paleontologist being his girlfriend Sarah, who is already there, opposed to the guy who can protect them, and the guy who can film shit. Obviously a plot device to make Ian go there, but it's a pretty fucking obvious one. Also, there has to be a kid involved, in this case Ian's daughter Kelly, played by Vanessa Lee Chester.
So long.
Sorry, I couldn't get a cab.
I'm going to assume she actually couldn't get a cab, but a modern movie, there'd be a message. So they kind of make Ian into a dick. They don't get along too good, obviously, but he can't tell her where he's going, that'd be ridiculous. So to excuse him never being there, he says this.
I'm not the one who dumped you here and split for Paris, so don't take it out on me.
Given you could potentially die on this trip, maybe you should say something else.
Hey, you want some good parental advice? Don't listen to me. Don't listen.
Or just say that, and walk away. Works too. So it's off to the island with their Mercedes branding, and Sarah, played by Julianne Moore, isn't really that hard to find.
How many Sarahs do you think are on this island?
But the problem is she doesn't have any intention on leaving. Even after almost being killed by a Stegosaurus for getting too close to their baby, she still has no intention on leaving because...
I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that shows. And on top of that, Kelly's stowed away too, because Ian is a terrible father after this Ludlow's mercenary team arrives to capture the dinosaurs. And instead of taking his daughter out of there like he planned, they go to watch because that's safe. Unfortunately, this is the scene when we meet the big game hunter, Roland Tembo, played by Peter Postlethwaite. And I say that because the other deleted scene was his original intro, explaining he didn't have any real intentions of going until he realized what he'd be hunting, not to mention a badass scene. But with this removed, his intro is kind of weak. He just rants about what they should be doing, maybe they didn't know he'd be a fan favorite character, and as a result his friend Asia really gets sidelined. So when he inevitably doesn't make it, it's hard to even tell if he's talking about him. That's partly due to his death not being seen, we'll get to that later, but I don't know why they cut this. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Anyhow, they're hunting dinosaurs to make the audience sad. I mean, look at how sad they are. But again, I definitely prefer this to what the new movies do. You know, when they put human life in the same category. That's what they do. They're gonna build a new theme park in San Diego because greed. But Vince Vaughn plays an environmentalist and they set them free, thus destroying everything and potentially killing people. But as long as they don't do anything stupid to destroy their own equipment, it should be...
Are you out of your mind?
He's got a broken leg. Let's get in the car before they hear us.
Yeah, they bring a crying baby into their trailer, so... Up until Fallen Kingdom was a thing, this really pushed the limit for stupidity. Obviously it will go terribly wrong, the parents will show up, they won't be pleased, and the problem is they caused all of it. Mainly Nick deliberately getting all the equipment destroyed and committing a stupid action to get theirs destroyed. You could argue it's justifiable, but it's still completely his fault. In the original, that's not the case, it's more of a sabotage. But here, it's kind of hard to look past it, even in Jurassic Park where logic isn't that relevant, and it's not even the extent of what his character will do. Speaking of logic, the trailer scene is probably the best scene in the movie, but it's also kind of stupid. It ends up hanging off the cliff. They climb the rope like 3 times after continuously falling back down, and all the while making jokes.
Yeah, 3 double cheeseburgers with everything. No onions on mine.
I don't know, we'll turn it over.
Is that funny? Yeah, but did all 3 of them say something? Luckily, the Mercedes can pull the big trailer back up the cliff, but then the Rexes decide to come back for some reason. I guess they really want revenge. In this franchise, we established not moving does work, but I guess nobody told him. But it does lead to what is easily the franchise's greatest death. Yeah, Eddie, our non-evil or deserving character, gets ripped in half. Shocking.
Why did you do that? What was it all for?
There's no comedy here, it's pretty damn gruesome, even the sound effect, and it's really the only time a character like him ever gets killed off. Especially because Nick deserved it, but it's nice seeing this in a Jurassic Park movie, even if it is only once. As for the others, the trailer misses, somehow they have the arm strength to climb out, and hitting the like button is much easier, so you gotta move the mouse down a bit, and the subscribe button is down there too. Also, the gaming channel is an option for the same kind of stuff with games. Link in the description. So they all decide to team up and head to the abandoned InGen base to call for help. The trip mostly goes smoothly. The asshole of the group gets a violent death because he's stupid. And Nick, the guy who's not gonna get killed, decides it'd be a good idea to steal Roland's bullets.
And that's fucking stupid.
Again, this is not a modern movie. They thought this was within reason. And when the T-Rex attacks, we have 2 deaths because Roland can't kill the damn thing, but he can still trank the other one, meaning InGen now has a T-Rex to take to the mainland. Last I checked, Nick knew they wanted to do this, so why the fuck did he steal his bullets? I mean, what could the gain of that decision possibly be? He can't kill it? Stuff like this is why the movie gets so much hate nowadays, and it's hard to argue. But that being said, the scenes we get are still pretty good. The chase, the waterfall, the long grass are all well done and memorable. The scene with the raptors is pretty damn good too. Not so much the gymnastics bit. Rivals in new movies for what the fuck. But I can't deny I do enjoy a lot of these scenes. And Jeff Goldblum, despite being commonly made fun of, is given a lot of good lines here.
The school cut you from the team?
You know what I don't enjoy? The one thing people seem to like. After Nick realizes he fucked up, and leaves the movie with no consequences, we move into the San Diego portion, and it's a badly paced mess. Yeah, after Roland has his badass exit,
I believe I've spent enough time in the company of death.
it's kind of downhill. First off, the logic as to how the T-Rex gets free. Apparently they didn't know what they were doing, but what the hell kind of sense does it make that the entire crew was dead and the Rex is still locked up? I know people try to debate how this happened, but I think the truth is, nobody thought this through. As for the quote-unquote rampage, it's okay. It's relatively brief. David Koepp has his cameo as the unlucky bastard. Spielberg has a well-hidden one too, but the whole sequence really feels tacked on, and the reason it feels that way is because it is. The ending was originally going to be vastly different, taking place on the island, involving paragliding and a number of other things. Can't go into full detail right here, but Spielberg wanted the big city rampage instead, and I may be one of the few people who don't agree. Like I said, it feels tacked on, and the original concept would have actually seen Aja dying on screen, apparently being torn apart by pterodons while in the air, opposed to the completely off-screen death that's easily missed. I guess he died in... Took me a long time to realize that. And because of this, and Roland's intro being cut, the whole dynamic is completely wasted. You barely even know who didn't make it, and Roland's intro is a lot less cool. In the end, it's too bad this scene doesn't work, because as you know, the concept of a rampaging dinosaur in the city is not very common in this franchise. We get like one scene like this within all three of the new movies. That said, some do like it, and that's okay. In the end, Ian and Sarah lead the Rex away with the baby, because some reason Peter told them where to find it. His attempt to stop them goes badly, the Rex is not too pleased, he gets his comeuppance, the Rex and the baby are safe and sent back, and John Hammond finally realizes, let's quit being fucking stupid.
These creatures require our absence to survive, not our help.
You belong in jail. Unfortunately, the whole absence thing was not followed at all. So that said, why do I still defend this movie? Because it's fun to watch. Yeah, despite this easily being the darkest JP movie, I still can't deny it's fun. The scenes are ridiculous, so much of it makes no sense. The stuff in the city and Nick are just bad, but the original did still have some of those issues. Not to the same extent, not even close, but I do find it odd that even today that's still considered a perfect movie, and this, to many, is heavily disliked. Yeah, the wonder is gone, Ian Malcolm isn't as good for the lead, and honestly, I guess I can see somebody liking this the least, you know, in the main trilogy, but still, I don't see it that way. It comes down to the scenes, a lot of them are still iconic, and it's the only time they made a different kind of movie without trying to lecture you, and a premise that isn't stupid on concept, like Fallen Kingdom. Definitely not perfect, but what sequel is? And in this case, I think the hate is a bit excessive. It may be controversial, but The Lost World Jurassic Park is still okay. I'm the analyst, and remember kids, if you want to advocate for animal rights, use common fucking sense.